Hey guys, this is Miko here. I'm back with another video, and this one's going to be a build guide on SNS VG. I don't have everything perfectly set up for this setup, but I could explain like how to play it and like why this build is very, very strong. I've rated this very, very high on my tier list, maybe too high. I think one in the army is very, very solid. The main reason for that is the shield's utility when you pull it out is very, very impactful when it comes to playing around bruisers because it gives them 30% fortify, which is a very relatively large amount compared to other things, and it's like a more passive effect in nature, meaning that it's like really hard for people to strip it. There is a bug right now where if you drop it on Obliv, it will strip it, but if you put your shield back up, or to take it down and put it back up, it will fix it. If you switch weapons and come back, it will fix it. So it's like not super consequential. And yeah, that's like the main reason why it's good. I think it's like in a similar spot with VGBB, I'd say, where VGBB is normally played. What the way I play it is like with 300 con, and you have like less damage, but you have more survivability, and you're still playing for the VG in that build, and you're also still playing for the VG in this build. But the difference is like kind of off of ebb and flow what you can do. So I have that video talking about ebb and flow if you don't know what I'm talking about. But basically, when you push into them, the VG can be very, very nice because you could set people up with, scream, drop your obliv, orb them, and then you could just put up their shield and then kind of AFK for a second. And then if you are and you could also just like kind of eat whenever you want to. But the main idea is like you set people up in a clump with your VG, and then you follow up by like kind of holding shield and letting your bruisers follow up. So if your bruisers follow up on you, then they get the fortify, and they're just kind of able to live in that clump very, very well. The way that people play this, or the way I've seen it played by some people right now, I think is wrong. They play for the SNS, and the VG is kind of a secondary. I think the VG, there's an aspect that like is arguable that it should be a secondary because you want to drop the Oblivion when people put pressure on you, so you could jump the stand back. I would argue that if you run it this way, like where you're more aggro with the VG, that's when it's better to run the leaping strike, and you don't go super far in a leaping strike because you only care about the mobility. You're using this to kite out, so if I lose my stam, I obviously can't dodge. I can't really run because the new melee changes, but I can like turn around and leaping strike away. And there's also some other mechanics with leaping strikes. So leaping strikes with stairs is very, very strong. There's a lot of this with mobility in New World where if you go upstairs, it will go further than typically possible. So it makes it like really, really good for escaping people. So if I'm getting like chased in fort and I'm like coming around up here and I use leaping strike here, I go all the way up that stair, which is like an abnormal amount of distance, and I'm able to like kite out very easily. So you have like mobility to escape, like blunderbuss, but you have like more util for your bruisers to follow up, if that makes sense. But you have like less solo impact. Um, so it's more of a support role in that aspect. The additional good part about it, Shield Rush, that's an extra weekend. That's nice. It's a decent slow, but it's mostly about the weekend, and everything else is basically playing for the Fortify. You get good CDR. You're able to live like very, very well at this build. Usually you go 500 con. I have not done that with this build yet because I have a really good VG, but when I actually spec into this, I do max out everything else in a con. But I'm not like sold on it enough slash not playing it enough in war to like fall all in into this build yet. So that's like why I think it's good at a high level. It's basically the key thing is playing for your VG and then playing for your SNS as a secondary. The other part that makes it really good is the bug with Plague Strikes and Trenchant Rend on any weapon that has it, where you can do a heavy attack and then it can swap off and then come back, and then that cooldown for Trenchant Rend no longer exists. So what this lets you do is it lets you put like a debuff on them that's effectively an entire VG combo on a single target, which basically means that you can blow up single targets whenever you want to, just by landing this debuff. Or if you just want to play defensive, you could do that as well. But the heavy attack animation for the sword's also the shortest in the game. So this is like very easy to hit. You just swap off, swap back, swap off, swap back, and you'll have it back. So it's like really, really easy to do that. And also when you get hit and you're tanking things, that's going to generate ult charge, which is why Vines is like solid with this build because people will congregate around you, and then the Vines is very easy to land. Like you could see the argument for other things, but I think Vines just makes sense because you're already generally at this build if they're focusing you. You're doing your job very well, and they're generally not going to do that. And if they are doing that, then you should be able to live because you have so much con. But if they're like soft focusing and you're able to get that ult and then like root people in place and keep your shield up for your melees, so your melees are able to go in more aggro, you could find your melees doing a lot more, which is why I think it's good. Uh, with this build in general, you're looking to maximize uh, freedom and refreshing ward, I believe. I could like I don't think shirking fort's good. I've seen some people like make the arguments like, oh, they could dodge once, and then just shield the rest, but I think that's kind of stupid. Um, I would just go freedom and refreshing ward and not really worry about anything else. I think there's an argument for invigorated over refreshing ward. I don't think it's a super strong argument. The other thing that's like really good to this build that's like kind of underrated is you probably want sturdy energy on your chest. And then on shield, you usually want slash forward sturdy fortification, which is a must-have in either sturdy or I mean you can really not go wrong with any of the perks on the shield besides, but you need sturdy fortification and probably slash forward. And then with this, you're able to do like a crazy like split where you're able to like go heavily into slash and heavily into elemental and not really worry about things. So this is like the one build in the game where I do run infused fire absorption pots, which sounds weird. The advantage of this is it never wears off. So basically, I could just pop one of these, and because I'm already so warded into everything else, and I could just like basically have 30% fire ward, so BBs that are shooting me won't do anything. And like BBs really like to drop nades on SNS, so that's why I tend to run those. But yeah, it's like a lot of it is based around the sword and supporting bruisers. So if you don't have a healer in your group or you're not able to stay alive, it's going to be very tough. So you just have to be wary of that. But the rest of this is like kind of a fairly straightforward kit. You're it's a lot of AFKing with this build. It's not super fun to play, but it's really effective to have one of them. The other aspect that makes it really good is from a fort standpoint. Well, even before that, if you go to an OPR standpoint, if you ever play against this and they're just sitting in a choke, then you're just not able to get through. So it's solid there. I know some people come for OPRs. I would just want to say that. From a war standpoint, uh, every single war that is competitive should be getting to fort within 10 to 15 minutes of the war. What that means is you're no longer should be playing for outside of fort, and the trend has been to play builds at tech for the inside of fort, and this is a build that is very, very good at B gate on the inside of fort, and it's also good at other gates at the inside of fort, because it's like the same concept of the OPR where people can walk up with the shield, and the shield is really good at holding space, and it's really good at taking space, and there tends to be oblivions around here, so you're able to gen stam. So it's just like really, really solid from a defending the fort standpoint, especially because people are like kind of congregated around you, which is why it's not as bad as people like think it is. But if I'm here and I'm blocking, like it's not the entire choke, but it is the vast majority of the choke is going to be getting my block. And usually you're just playing on top of your bruisers at that point, so you can go in for your VG combo or whatever, drop the obliv, and then you can just kind of AFK for a second. Maybe do a heavy, swap off your VG, eat a little bit, do another heavy, because that's just going to keep applying your stuff. And then when your melees need help, that's when you go back to blocking. But when your melees don't really need help, that's when you can go to debuff stacking and just basically deleting people. It's a really good counter to BBs as well, because if you mark BBs with a 25% disease, and then you scream them with the BG and are on disease cap, and then you get them close to Ren cap alone, they're able to die very easily, and it's very obvious who to focus down when you see the sword and shield player like doing a heavy attack on one person, and they can't get you out of your grit or can't cancel you out of that heavy animation unless they blast shot you. So you're pretty much safe all the time unless there are great sword warhammers on you or great axe warhammers on you. But usually great axe warhammers will not prow you and they'll prow other people. So overall it feels like a soft counter to the meta, and it's like a solid choice to have as a one of in wars. So that's basically all I have for this gear that you're looking for. You're looking for 4 to 5 peace Brazil. You're looking for 1 sturdy energy. You're looking for 5 freedom, and then you're kind of filling the rest with whatever weapon perks that you really want to, like probably the ones for VG, uh, or probably refreshing ward. Refreshing ward doesn't proc if you block things, so it's not as good as like a default perk. Amulet, you're looking for Brazil, or you're looking for health stam slash. Ring, you're looking for party, I guess Invig, but honestly, Invig's probably not even worth it. But this kind of ring is like pretty good. Invig might not be worth it for this build. I don't know what you would get inside instead of that. Maybe infected. Yeah, infected would probably be better than invig. I'd probably do that. But it's like if you're just maining this build specifically, and that's just because you literally put out 0 damage, so like why even run invigorated punishment anyway? And then earring, you probably just want to run teardrop. So yeah, or something that it has refreshing toast and refreshing ward, and regenerating is really good because you have a bunch of health. So yeah, just run teardrop. I'll either do bile or or vines. Bile has they updated PTR patch notes and it is bugged with some of the healer stuff, but in my opinion, healer passive's not working versus their clump dying. I think that their clump dying is like far outweighs that, and it's like not a battle, even though it's been like kind of taboo. Um, I don't think it's a bad thing to run it, but vines is also solid with this build. The only bad part about vines is you reduce your stam regen, so you have to be kind of wary about that. So maybe you run the fortifying vines with this build, but yeah, I think there's like a decent amount of customization to go with this. The big things to take away: abuse the swapping off your sword and shield to reset the perk. Abuse stairwells if you are going for a setup that has the leaping strike. There's like another setup that you can do that you basically drop most of this left tree stuff and then you go into shield bash. I think that's solid too, but the thing with that is you have no way to kite. I prefer having some way to kite, even if it's like not the most ideal way. And shield bash is good for in most situations, but I don't think it's like super insane. So yeah, that's all I got for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video.